I started painting miniatures. Now this all started when I got a new board game called Zombicide. I've been genuinely addicted. You play as characters in a city, roaming the streets for objectives, equipment, and rescuing survivors. Of course, you're killing zombies the entire way. The only issue with the base game of Zombicide is that every single game piece, minus the player characters, are boring, dull gray. And the characters themselves are orange, so, not a whole lot to go off of. So I'm going to paint them. Okay, so starting painting, I don't have any of the paints that I want quite yet. I've ordered a couple off of Amazon, but from everything I've seen, Citadel paints is just the way to go for contrast paints. The place that I'm going to go to today also has a spray primer, black spray primer, which is supposedly better as well. So I'm going to get that a shot, but I'm going to be selling some magic cards to do so I can get some in-store credit, so I don't absolutely have to break bank to get this started. But yeah. Collecting my haul from the store and from Amazon, I laid my tools ahead of me and began the first steps of painting. Priming the characters. For those of you that don't paint like me, priming is a necessary piece of the process. If you've ever tried putting paint on plastic, you would find that the paint doesn't really stick to the pieces. It kind of just blotches and then spreads apart. So priming is spraying like a sticky base color onto the pieces so that the paint will actually work. Now, one of the issues I ran into almost immediately was trying to figure out a way to mount these little pieces onto something so that I could paint them without absolutely painting my hand just full of primer. So what I came up with was using mounting putty, so like this tacky putty, to stick some popsicle sticks together and then mount those with mounting putty in like a row, so I could paint them all in one line back and forth. Now, after a little bit of research, I decided to paint the base coat of black, and then after it dries, to spray white over the pieces where light would be shining onto it. This naturally gives shading to the pieces before painting. It's why I chose contrast paints, because it's clear enough to show the underside of the actual pieces. I just wanted to show a little bit of the aftermath of painting these primed pieces. So you can see the shade on the inside and that they're white where the light would be showing from. So I crack open my next little holder here to get a miniature onto it and prep my station so that I can start painting. Now, one of the things I collected on my little shopping venture is called a wet palette. Basically, it's this sponge that has water in it, and then you place parchment paper over the top, and it holds paint and keeps it wet so it doesn't dry out as you're painting. Now, this is the first time doing it, and so I was worried if I put too much water into the palette or not, and as you can see, it starts dripping back into the sponge, and immediately I know this is not good. So I scrap the first one, drain a little bit of the water, and try again. This time it actually worked out fine, and I was successful, at least I think. So I put the paint on there and went to work. Really quickly, I just wanted to go over how small the paintbrushes I had to use are. The point is so tiny, and it makes sense because you have to get these details on these intricate little figures, but the brushes are so small. Using these extremely tiny brushes, I decided to get to work on probably one of the most complicated zombies I possibly could have chosen. This zombie has a vest on that is supposed to be two different colors. It has little diamonds on it, and then the pants are a different color from the shirt. The sleeves are a different color from the vest. I don't know why I chose this one to start with, but I did. And it actually turned out pretty decent. I decided to go with red for like the little diamonds and then green for the vest itself. For my first figure, I put black as the pants, and then from then on I went brown for the pants. But the skin went on really nicely, and I tried to go from like an outside in type of approach. It worked okay. I later changed this to find a common paint among all of my figures, like of the four, and just paint each one at a time so that it had time to dry before I applied a different coat of a different paint. So I ended up painting the whole crew and then some others, and I had my wife help me for this next one because it had these tiny little pieces on the sign, and she did a great job. She showed off the sign itself perfectly, and the jacket came out looking amazing. The pants were brown, which was kind of neat because the sweater's torn, so it looked fantastic. For the base zombies alone, I think it took me about 2 to 3 days to actually paint every single one of them, but I was pretty happy with all of them and how they turned out, minus one. This one looks like a gross dead girl, but all the others came out pretty nicely. The color schemes I appreciated, and most of them had like a guide I could look at, but I thought that they turned out pretty good for my first time ever painting miniatures. However, I wasn't quite done. I still had runners, brutes, and player characters to paint, so it was back to priming. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have primed all of them at the same time so that I wouldn't have to waste primer, or if I needed more, I would have time to go get more. But I followed the same process as I did before by painting them with a base coat of black and then painting white from where the light source is. So I went back to work painting each meticulous little piece with these teeny tiny little brushes. Now, whether or not these are going to look good, I had no idea, but I was just wanting them to have a little bit more personality, so I was actually glad about how these turned out and how they ended up looking like zombies. Like I said before, I genuinely wished I primed everything prior because it rained on the 3rd night that I tried to paint the brutes. So I had an idea. The idea was pretty simple. I'm going to spray paint inside of a box. Now the problem was I didn't have a mask available and it was raining outside, so I propped the garage door open a little bit and then went back to town on painting all of the brutes. Now, all in all, the brutes turned out to look spectacular, and I saved the rest of the painting just to kind of go through and show you all of my creations. I then went on to paint the actual abominations and player characters, and they turned out to look fantastic. We tried to focus on a lot of the details on these player characters because we have little icon cards that show us exactly where each color goes and how they should look after the fact. But the characters that we play the most with were the ones that got the most attention, and then everything else was painted, probably not with as much love, but my wife ended up helping me with the abominations, painting this one and the next one with a lot of attention to detail, and I kind of failed on the security cop. And even though this took better part of a week, I know that playing games from here forward is going to look that much better because every piece has paint on it. Now, if you're still here to the end, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Please leave a like and subscribe. I'll be here for a while, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!